I'm Todd. I am the creative director at Fiero. We're a Phoenix-based creative agency, and you can tell by our title. We specialize in game-inspired strategies both for customers and employees. So today's session is about the intersection of leanness and gamification, and essentially how you can use one to achieve the other. So primarily, I had intended this to be somewhat of an educational and like a utility-based message as marketers and HR professionals, folks who are in learning and development in a lot of organizations, have a passion and an interest in this sort of thing. Obviously, you come to sessions and trade shows like this. This is a great way to get some energy around gamifying your organization when you can paint a very cogent picture as to how it's going to affect the bottom line. Because every organization is primarily concerned with P&L. So this is hopefully a little bit useful in that regard. So anyways, to start with lean, there's a bunch of different definitions for lean, just the way there are a ton of different definitions for gamification. Basically, the way I look at it, it's this function happening in perpetuity to find ways to take costs out of processes, both consumer-facing and employee-facing. It's very, very agile, very lean. It's built on this, Silicon Valley model here: iterate, build, test, fail fast, stuff like that. The definition of it from lean.org is actually pretty straightforward. It's to maximize customer value by minimizing waste and creating more value with fewer resources. So pretty straightforward, and it's obvious why organizations from Apple and 3M to Xerox and Ford and General Motors and General Mills and 85% of the Fortune 500 are going lean, because it's a pretty desirable outcome, obviously. So pivoting over to gamification, obviously, just like lean, it has varying definitions based on who you talk to. This is kind of how we define it. We define it as the application of game intelligence. Everything that games use to engage users, to make them feel more inspired, motivated, and rewarded, applying them outside of their native habitat of games to make other things which are inherently less fun, less stimulating, less valuable, more fun. And obviously, it's a therapy for a current day and age where attention spans are at an all-time low, and this can help remedy that. So psychology being the driving force behind this, basically this is, as other folks over the last couple days have discussed, this is really psychological, and it's filling triggers, or it's actually triggering different human emotions. So these games step in, and these can fill the void that people are, the gap that they're experiencing day to day in their life, creating environments predictably where you can feel some or all of these emotions pretty regularly, and that, of course, is a very desirable need state. So it's pretty simple. Games, they win because they're fun, they're interesting, they're addictive. So the question that we ask, and probably everybody here asks to themselves rhetorically, is why can't these interactions between your brand and your audience be somewhat like that as well? So I like very trite and cliche business diagrams, so I have a Venn diagram. So the ideal would be the intersection between gamification and leanification, right? Just another way to put the pursuit of cost savings and greater efficiency. That sounds like a good outcome, but really they're not related so much in that way. The way we see it is one actually is an instrument or a tool or an approach to achieve the other. Because gamification isn't an outcome, it's a strategy. It's a way that you look at the world. It's a lens. It's an understanding. And once you get it, you start applying it to everything, like how you interact with your kids. I have a much greater success rate getting my 5-year-old son to pick up after himself if I offer him something like 20 minutes of iPad usage or some ice cream rather than just relying on his dutiful 5-year-old nature. So I've constructed this very remedial diagram of what I call customer success. And I say it's remedial because it's so high level, but despite that, I think it's a fairly good representation of the 4 major things every brand needs to do to succeed and create success for their customers. And obviously, customer success is always the primary driver of organizational or brand success. And I want to deconstruct these 4 categories and show how gamification applied within them can create better results with fewer resources. So obviously the attraction is primarily the variety of mechanisms you use to message to, promote, and draw in potential customers. Conversion, the mechanisms by which you attempt to migrate those folks from potential customers to paying customers. Delivery is huge, right? Actually finding ways to deliver on your brand promise, what it is you've promised folks as a means to get them in the door. And then retention, loyalty. That is a huge category for so many brands right now, is reducing churn. So what I want to do is kind of run through these micro case studies in each of these segments with this as kind of the guiding frame of reference. So you guys know Andres Marszewski. He's a big thought leader in the space. He does a lot of great content contribution. His blog is awesome. And he put together this engagement grid, which I think is really cool to show the relationship of different game mechanics, approaches, and how they are relevant and how they are useful based on varying factors of time as well as depth, and showing how each of these independently and collectively can work together to really drive the user behaviors and the success you're looking for. So starting in the bottom left corner, the shortest and most superficial layer of gamification, according to this model, are the extrinsic motivators. So those are the very common game-like manifestations you expect to see, badges, points, leaderboards, stuff like that. In a vacuum, it's our opinion that those are probably going to fall short of a full long-term execution, but they can certainly do the job for novelty, intrigue, and being that initial trigger, right, which is what you want. You want to initially trigger a behavior as a means to starting a new habit. The second one over there to its right is very interesting, and that's UI. And that's something that I feel like doesn't get discussed enough in the context of gamification, is the actual user interface, the design. Not the game design itself, but the way it occurs visually to the user. You think about how elegant games are in their natural state, how elegantly and quickly they can convey very complex information. What can marketers learn from that? Why does Call of Duty, which is a $1 billion franchise and usually makes twice that within 2 weeks of each release, takes 900 hours to play through it completely, why does that game ship without an instruction manual? Why do games do such a great job of visually and with prompts and with other sorts of mechanics getting people to progress through an experience? So the actual design of things, like your website, like your mobile apps, can take massive cues from games without it seeming like an obvious game component, and you can experience great success, and I'll show you an example of that. And then the last one, for the purposes here, is for the intrinsic. That's kind of the holy grail, is when you actually get people to feel different emotions as a byproduct of the experience you've created for them. Again, this model calls it the ramp experience, those feelings of relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Again, going back to a few slides ago when we talked about the emotional and mental gaps for a lot of people that they turn to games to provide. Those are the types of emotions that really engender loyalty and create significant cost of abandonment, to where if you're feeling these types of emotions about the experience that you're having with the brand, the likelihood of you abandoning that for something else is much lower. So I'm going to discuss these 4 micro case studies in each of these 4 categories: attraction, conversion, delivery, and retention, at a high level and kind of abstractly. Again, I wanted this to be an educational and useful discussion for you guys, not purely self-promotional. So I will happily engage with anyone after the session, or we can connect on LinkedIn or Twitter if you have any questions. But so let's talk about attraction. So a major online travel agency, one that you all may have used to get here, had a really great case study using gamified communications to streamline how they marketed to and converted their loyalty club members. So they used data that they gleaned from a very customized, deeply engrossing gamified experience to streamline, personalize, and tailor their marketing communications. And the upside was pretty incredible. This activation for this client rendered them a 40-to-1 ROI. Also got them some PR in the New York Times. Not that they needed that, being who they are, but this campaign, this execution was so innovative and so effective and so kind of transformative in the industry that it was very buzzworthy. But you talked about this particular category of attraction, like what did gamification do differently than previous just digital marketing CRM best practices? Of course, all organizations have a lot of time, money, processes, and individuals responsible for optimizing things like open rates and click-through rates. And even despite best efforts, best practices, and analytics, success usually looks like something in the low teens as far as opens and click-throughs. And that's what this client had experienced as a previous benchmark for success. Using this data gleaned from the gamification exercise, which had people simulate aspirational travel paths, we were able to generate emails which were open in the 50th and 60th percentile and clicked through at similar levels. So, by an order of magnitude, it wiped out their previous benchmarks for CRM success because it was creating game-like outcomes. It was creating outcomes which were more personalized, more valuable, more relevant. Of course, I'm going to be more likely to open an email about a very finite but very attractive package deal offer to Toronto when this game has indicated that is one of the major cities that I would love to but have not yet visited, rather than a generic 25% off rental cars email for that same distribution period. So obviously the leanness or the waste reduction here is fairly apparent. The ROI speaks for itself, but it also gave them this very, very rich data to which they could continue to lean on to remarket to these travelers. It also allows them to focus resources, both time and cash, both of which are finite, into things that they know are going to work already. So that's where you kind of go into that lean model of how you're building, testing, and then improving. So again, showing it against this grid, like what particular categories of mechanics were most important to pull off a wildly successful gamified marketing exercise. It was a combination of these three. The extrinsic, again, on its own is usually not going to last long, but it can be a great mechanism for novelty, intrigue, and initial behavior trigger, which of course is very necessary. Everything needs to start somewhere. Then the UI, a very elegant, streamlined, brand harmonious, but fun, interesting, and very straightforward UI, both in the communications and the experience itself. And then the intrinsic value of just a more relevant and more personalized and more valuable and more rewarding, more social experience relative to what they had previously come to expect from that brand drove big activation and big improvement for the user. So the next category, conversion. How do you get those folks that you've managed to appeal to or gotten a small piece of their consciousness? How do you migrate them from prospective customer to paying customer? So an interesting case study here. This is for the world's largest AAA 5-diamond hotel. It's in Vegas. You may have been there. It's a beautiful property. They actually hired our team to reimagine and then redesign and relaunch their website with the new booking engine. Of course, our strategy was not to turn that website into a game. That would not have been a very strategic decision. But again, taking cues from games, best practices as to how games appeal to people, educate people, convert people, and migrate them along experiences, we created a new website that, relative to its predecessor, was generating 30% more revenue with 25% fewer page views. So you talked there about the thoughtfulness of an experience that takes the friction out of it for the user. All-time low attention spans are a reality for everyone. So the quicker you get someone from where they are to where it is they want to be, the better off for everybody. So the upside there was pretty tremendous. We leaned out a burden on the user. Their user experience actually became a more rich experience. This website, in its initial iteration, took the user 13 clicks from the homepage to be able to find out which of the on-property restaurants were open for lunch. And we made that a 2-click process. So that seems like pretty basic stuff, blocking and tackling, if you will. But again, using gamification as a lens to find a smoother conversion and onboarding process is a huge win, and something that we're working on for a lot of different brands right now. This is a primary focus for people in pretty much every category, is taking some of the waste and the friction out of the conversion process. So here, this was primarily an exercise in intrinsic value and user interface design. Delivery. This is a huge one. This is probably the biggest component and where the largest opportunity lies. Like, how can you create legitimate incremental levels of value for your customer from the brand and the products that you are bringing them in to avail themselves of? So this is a really cool one, something we're pretty excited about, and has a lot of potential to be very transformative in what we consider to be a pretty laggard industry. So and that's publishing. So if you think about your favorite magazine, whether that's Us Weekly or Fast Company or Popular Mechanics, we're working with a major publisher right now to actually reimagine and redesign what digital magazines look like at their very core. Right now, the digital magazine experience is largely a Kindle exercise where you flip through PDF versions of print magazines. There's not a lot of really significant incremental value to that experience relative to the magazine you can pick up on the newsstand. So when these major publishers want to get you to pay for it, a good question you might have is why? What is the value there? But we want to reimagine this experience and take advantage of the significant horsepower of the devices that they're native on, like iPads and other tablet devices. And then, again, as with gamification being the strategic guiding light, make these more effective and more valuable by creating more of those game-like outcomes. So instead of it being the GQ in this just random, non-specific example, why not make this magazine your GQ? Why not onboard people into this experience with a personalization exercise that we reward them for, where you select your favorite authors and topics and brands and products, and all of a sudden your content, both intermediate content that is produced daily, as well as the actual magazine content, which publishes monthly, gets customized and tailored to you. A reward system for consumption. Obviously, paid circulation for magazines is a big business driver, but it pales in comparison to the P&L impact of their advertising units. Right now, brands have and continue to pay handsomely just to reside next to editorial content in attractive magazines. But this experience will create data, engagement, and preference information that will allow much more dynamic and, frankly, expensive ad units to be sold to these advertisers. L'Oreal is always interested in being in the pages of Elle, People, magazines like that. Again, just for the exposure and for the proximity to their target audience. But imagine the premium they would pay to someone who'd already indicated that they had a brand and product preference for these things, and through their behavior, we had gleaned other things about their preferences and their patterns to where you could fulfill in real time things that were interesting to them, delivering branded rewards as a redemption for some of these activation currencies. So really exciting project here, and the leanness is pretty apparent. They're going to spend less money on advertising to try to pull in these new subscribers and convert a lot more of them because the experience is more valuable. Right now, this publisher has tons and tons of real estate on devices, millions and millions of downloads, but 95% of those downloads are non-paying subscribers. So there's a huge latency there. Even incremental gains from that 95% could have a huge impact on the bottom line. Also, it's creating this agile infrastructure that's easily versioned and can be extended to all of their brands. So that is an extrinsic exercise with the motivators, like loyalty instruments, like badges, points, leaderboards, rewards, a more thoughtful user interface, and the intrinsic value. And then quickly, we'll talk about retention. Loyalty is the main track here and a big topic for everyone. We're working with a major national utility company right now on a gamified self-service renewal activation. So you think about utility companies, telecom, their business is built on being able to retain people year after year, or actually 2 years after 2 years when contracts expire. And they primarily rely on the attractiveness of a bribe, a subsidized iPhone, to get you to renew a contract. But it's not a very consistent effort, and with these carriers consolidating, retention is the biggest need for them. So creating a gamified activation where in an automated way these communications go out to people 2 months prior to their contracts expiring and give them a reason to engage with the brand, play little mini games that educate the consumer as to the current and future competitive differences this utility provider offers over the competition, and then giving them reasons, both extrinsic and intrinsic, to stay with the brand and convert early. The data shows that if you get someone to renew prior to them expiring in the first place, that lifetime value of a customer goes sky high. So, the leanness impact here is pretty obvious. This is a $1 billion thing for this company year over year across their categories, wireless and residential, and it's creating more value for customers with fewer resources. And it's also directly aimed at a main consumer complaint in this category, which is that existing customers always seem to get a more raw deal than new customers. You get a great deal to come aboard, but to stay, the deal is not so sweet. So this is a custom designed, tailored, very personalized and rewarding experience that the brand can stand behind as something that they expressly designed and delivered as a thank you for your business and as an acknowledgement of their loyalty. So this is scalable across all of their internal and external channels. So I'm going to wrap up here. This is another 3-channel exercise. A lot of intrinsic value. The extrinsic, of course, is big when you want to convert somebody or keep them. And then a very interesting, fun, gamified user interface. So again, if you see how you can apply these principles in each one of these categories, you get better results, you get happier customers, and you save cash. So again, my agenda here was to hopefully give you a way to frame this, if it's useful, as to get some energy in the organization behind going with gamification, that there is a significant cost savings. And then the other thing that we didn't touch on is just what happens if you actually apply this not just to your customers, but how about the people that do the work, that answer the phone calls, or that actually make the coffee within these organizations? When you are gamifying both your audience and your employees, that's where the real impact lies. So, as I mentioned, I am happy to engage with anybody after the session. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Twitter. We'll be around tonight. Looking forward to the keynotes. And thank you for your patience through the AV exercise, and thanks for your attention during the session.